Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yes? All right. So, are you ready for another session on the Tisamettaya Sutta? Ready or not, that's what's going to happen. Today, I promise I'll finish it. But it was necessary for me to go through, build up some of that background information and everything so that we can fully understand most of the other suttas. But I have promised to go through the Majjhe Sutta, which is describing that very enigmatic verse in more detail. But I'm not going to have time in this sutta to do a very good detailed job, but at least in brief I will try to explain the Majjhe Sutta first. So I won't even read out the Tisamettaya, or should I just read a little bit about that, just to remind everybody, since it was a bit while ago we did that. So in the Tisamettaya Sutta we read, "Who here in the world is content?" said Venerable Tisamettaya. "Who is not agitated? What seer, having known both ends, is not stuck in the middle? Who do you say is a great man, who has gone beyond the seamstress here?" So this is where people were wondering what are these two ends and what is the middle and who the seamstress was. And this sutta, this verse was brought up like in a symposium or like a gathering of monastics in discussion, and 6 different monastics offered 6 different possibilities as answers. So they all went to the Buddha and asked, and the Buddha said in the Tisamettaya, in regards to the Tisamettaya's sutta, he meant contact is one end, arising of contact is the other end, cessation of contact is in the middle, and craving is the seamstress. But we went through this in detail during the previous session, so that one is done already. Do you remember? Everybody remembers that? Yeah? So contact was that experience, this is happening in this life, which keeps next moment becomes the past. And when we experience and when we delight in the experience, then the arising of the other end is the rebirth, right? And cessation of contact is the ending, that is the nibbana, but craving is what stops us seeing the possibility of ending. In brief, that's what it was. So then we also spoke, even from the very first day, about the past, future and present, right? So past, again, is easier, so it's past in the sense all the past experiences, very similar. Another way of looking at, you can also say it's the past, in the sense all our past experience is what we have, all the perceptions build up, our likes and dislikes, everything comes from our past experiences, and based on that we long for things in the future. So we die attached to the eye, to the tongue, to the nose, to all of these 6 senses, so we have a future. And the enlightenment is possible right here in the present moment by seeing the cessation of everything and seeing the conditionality of everything, realizing that there is nobody but only a process. This is that deep understanding about non-self that happens. But craving constantly tries to close up the present by keeping us very preoccupied with the past and the future. This also we described quite well, quite a bit, so that is also explained. And then last night I did a brief explanation about name and form, again to mention. So name are the aspects of the mind, various abilities of the mind, so to speak. So it's an ability of the mind to feel, to perceive, to have intention, to make contact, and also to give attention. So these 5 things, it is by means of these things we can have an experience. So that is why so this is like the cognitive function, isn't it? And more than cognition even. So this is also how the conceivings happen. through the perceptions and the volitional formations that we get into the trap. So, but we also explain, so form is just the material body made up of the hardness, liquidity, air and heat. So similar to a table or to a tree. So that part of the body, and when this body dies, it's no different to a tree log, right? So it's kind of like that. What gives it a being is that nama aspect. So they stay together as a being. So Ajahn Brahmali also mentioned in the Ajita Sutta a little bit more about what the prior to the Buddha, how Brahmins understood this name and form, giving it an individuality, and that is why they were asking in the Ajita's question, where do name and form cease? They were thinking when name and form cease, there will be this everlasting consciousness, which they think as the Atman, who will last somewhere at a state of peace. So that was their strong misunderstanding that they had. And that is also probably why they were asking about being stuck. So Tissa Metteyya may have had some good meditation, but he felt stuck in the middle. Stuck with what? Stuck with his wrong view. Because of his wrong view, he couldn't see the cessation of consciousness. Because for him, consciousness could not cease, right? It is believed to be very permanent entity, permanent self. When you have such a strong view, it is not possible to really. So it is with the wrong view that you would still get stuck. And of course the craving will help you, because you're craving, you're wanting to experience a kind of a very incredible state of peace. They were imagining maybe that is what they were wanting to cross this flood and reach into. So that is still a form of wanting to exist. So there's still a bhava tanha. So craving was not completely eradicated in whatever meditation they were doing. So they were still stuck in the middle. So with when you do the meditation with the right view, with the very open mind, and then you come to a point where you see, the operation of this name and form. It is also seeing through the contact as well. They are very close how this happens. They are just different aspects given for the same thing that is happening for the sake of explaining, especially to break this very strong view that the Brahmins had, this word concept they had, name and form. So it is with the aspects of name that we recognize form, right? That is how we know that's a cup, that's a table. To see, to feel, all of these things, you need the name to be able to know there is form. And if there was no form, name can't also exist, because for name to exist, it should feel something, it has to perceive something. So, not completely without form, because arupa states can exist, the name, but there is still something subtle. That's a part that I'm not very clear how to explain. Do you have a way to explain that? How name can exist without the form in arupa?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of, if you have name and form, this means that some aspect of name and form has to exist, not everything.
Right.
Because there's always a limitation. There's even for name, there are certain aspects of name that don't exist in certain realms.
Right.
So there's always going to be a subset of the total possibilities that exist. Yeah.
So in general, though, in the dependent origination, when the Buddha did, on the night of his awakening, when he was going back on the backward sequence of the dependent origination, he saw what gives rise to name and form was consciousness, and what gives rise to consciousness, he also saw it was actually name and form. Even though Sankara also gives rise to consciousness, he also saw it was name and form. So there was like a whirlpool, like a connection. They were interdependent, name and form and consciousness, like two sheaves of barley, right? That was, so name and form and consciousness feed each other. If one felt, the other felt. So consciousness gave rise to name and form gave rise to consciousness. So it is to show this, that it is broken up like this. So in order for all those name factors to operate, it has to be conscious. That's the difference. So even though we have the possibility to feel, perceive, give attention, do all of these things, when we die, when the consciousness departs, we can't do anything, it's just only form, right? So for name to operate, consciousness, it has to be there. But consciousness is outside of the name, in the way the Buddha describes, is just to show consciousness arise dependent on things. So dependent on name, like dependent on the contact, like you have an object and you give attention and consciousness arise as a part of that contact. So just to show the conditionality of contact is important to understand when the conditions fall, consciousness also come to an end. So again, in there, it would be the wrong view, that the view of the Atman, the everlasting consciousness that the Brahmins had, that they would feel stuck in the middle, because the middle was the consciousness. So, but when you do the practice in the right way, with building up all the factors, like Ajahn was telling, not just meditation, all the factors are very important of the Noble Eightfold Path. So starts with the right view. So once you base your meditation on right view, then you will be able to see things in the right way when you have the power of the mind free of hindrances. So that is about the consciousness. So we now covered 3 things. So then there is the pleasant in one end, painful in the other end, neutral in the middle. So again, when it comes to the problem of existence, it's the past pleasant feelings that is the problem, right? Because all of our past pleasant feelings is what gives rise to the cravings, to the desires, for the longings. So therefore we get a future rebirth. But what did the Buddha say? Birth was noble truth, first noble truth. Birth is suffering. So what arises is painful feeling. So what we actually experience when we are born, for the large part of our life, in fact, pleasant feeling is a distorted perception. Really, at the end of the day, feeling is just feeling. We put added feeling to it to make it pleasant, but painful feeling. So pain is what arises. So on the other end, we can see it like that. There may be other ways of explaining, but this is what came to my mind. And the neutral feeling is the Nibbana, right? Nibbana is always in the middle. But we have to be very careful with neutral feeling. When the neutral feeling is when the delusion underlies neutral feeling, that's very dangerous. That is complacency. Yeah. So this can happen to us very easily. You feel really nice, neutral feeling, and if you become very happy and contented with that, that is problematic, right? So neutral feeling, but neutral feeling together with wisdom, well, that is the right kind of neutral feeling. So equanimity and all the states above that. So that's the middle. So how you get stuck in the middle is when there is no wisdom. Yeah. If neutral feeling is there, but with delusion still, then you are stuck. You think you are done, but you're not done. You're probably going to be reborn in one of those very long lifespan Brahma realm, like Asanya kind of realm. But that is dangerous, right? That is how you could get stuck. This is what happened to Uddaka, Ramaputta and Alara Kalama. I think they were stuck in the middle with this neutral feeling. They thought, okay, I can't feel anything, must have overcome suffering, but they haven't, because it's not by suppressing. Suffering is to be understood. It is a parinyeya Dhamma, right? It is to be understood. It is not to be suppressed or gotten rid of in that way, but it is through understanding that you overcome suffering. So that is pleasant and painful feeling. Is that okay? Understanding? Yeah. And then there is the 6 internal sense bases, that is the eye, nose, tongue, ear, body, and mind. And then its respective objects, the forms, sounds, tastes, and all those things as the other end. and consciousness is in the middle. So this is quite, again, very similar to how you make contact or name and form. So it is with the internal sense contacting an external object, the consciousness arises. So very similar kind of thing, said from a different angle. That's why the Buddha said they were all right, but they just used different terminology. Instead of saying contact and arising of contact, here it's just shown as just the internal sense basis and the external objects and the arising of consciousness. So this is more like not the present and future lives, but just even perceptual process happening right now also, how consciousness arises and passes away. So that is all I would say for now for that one. But the last one, what is personal existence, sakkaya, and origin of sakkaya, sakkaya samudaya, and cessation of sakkaya, sakkaya nirodho. Very interesting, right? Sakkaya. Sakkaya means identity. So in order to see that, we can use this. There's a beautiful, very profound sutta called Chullavedalla Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya. Just a little bit of that, just to go through that. So it's a beautiful discourse. This is a bhikkhuni, bhikkhuni Dhammadhita, talking with her ex-husband, which is Visakha, who is also practicing. So the ex-husband is asking questions to the bhikkhuni. So he says, "Lady, identity is said. What is called identity by the Blessed One?" So sakkaya is, it says, yeah. Friend Visakha, these 5 aggregates affected by clinging are called identity, Panchupadana-khandha. Is everybody familiar what Panchupadana-khandha are? Form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. Yeah, these things. So, affected by clinging, the feeling aggregate affected by clinging, the perception aggregate affected by clinging, formation affected by clinging, and the consciousness aggregate affected by clinging. These 5 aggregates affected by clinging are called identity by the Blessed One. Right? So this is what is called. So these 5 things: form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness, but with clinging, yeah, it's attachment. This is upadana khandha is important. This upadana is the problem, the holding on. So form is held onto, feeling is held onto, perceptions are held onto. When they're held onto, that is what makes a identity, a being maybe. Yeah, saying, "Good lady," the lay follower Visakha delighted in and rejoiced and asked another question. Origin of identity. Origin of identity is said. What is called the origin of identity? Friend Visakha, it is craving which brings renewal of being, is accompanied by delight and lust, and delights in this and that. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for being, and craving for non-being. This is called the origin of identity by the Blessed One. So this is actually the second noble truth. Yeah, it's exactly the same wording. Ya tanha pono bhavika nandiraga sahagata tatra tatra abhinandini kama tanha bhava tanha vibhava tanha. It's exactly the same second. So it shows how when we have craving for the sensuality, craving for existence, and craving for non-being, how this gives us, how this keeps us connected with form. We'll get a form, we'll be able to experience feeling. So how these things are held on, how it gives rise again and again. So how rebirth happened as a result of craving. And then he asked about the cessation. Cessation of identity. Cessation of identity. He said, what is called the cessation of identity? Friend Visakha, it is the remainderless fading away and ceasing and giving up, relinquishing, letting go and rejecting of the same craving. This is called the cessation of identity. This is the third noble truth. This is the same wording as third noble truth, Chaga Patinisaggo Mutti Analayo. So the giving up, relinquishing, letting go, and rejecting of that very craving. So ending of that very craving, that is the ending of the being, or the ending of these 5 aggregates. So when the craving for forms, craving for feeling, craving for perceptions, craving for volition and consciousness come to an end, that is Nibbana, right? That is the end of things. So, so in here it says, what is the way leading to that? It is the Noble Eightfold Path. Right? So this is how you have to practice to get there, but the question here is, okay, personal existence. So 5 aggregates is one end, arising is the craving, cessation is the ending of craving in the middle. So the seamstress is trying to hide its own extinction. Yeah, because that's what Nibbana is, right? So she wants to exist, which is why she tries to hide it by putting stitches. But when it's open, when we see the impermanence in these things, the unsubstantial, transient nature, when we devalue, we realize there is nobody here, just a empty process, empty of a self, nothing belonging to a self. When we come to that understanding through meditation, not just by knowledge, but we see through deep meditation after this is what is called seeing. And then craving comes to an end. So that is how that is in the middle. So these are the 6. So I have done all 6. Did you understand all of that? Great, must be enlightened now. It is just giving you a brief way of looking at it. But if you are keen, then you'll have to at least do some more study on it. But even understanding it in a brief way, it's kind of nice. It's just looking at the very same spot from just different angles. And different people have different inclinations. But whichever direction you want to practice, you will come to the same point of giving up craving and reaching full enlightenment. Whether you do it by more looking at the six sense bases, or whether you focus on the aggregates, elements are not even mentioned here. You could also use elements, you could use feelings, you could use whichever way that you want to practice. At the end of the day, you will reach the same realization. So that is Majje Sutta in brief for you. And so, what else did I want to do? Okay, so how do we do this? This is important. Right now we know the problem really well. We see how stuck we are. And it is one thing to understand, yes, craving is a problem, but trying to give up, we know how hard it is, even for the small things, let alone the big things. So what kind of practice? Of course, the main practice is the Noble Eightfold Path, the full practice. So, but there are also other very helpful ways and things and explanations given about this. And Ajahn was mentioning today during the Punnaka's question, the last sutta which he didn't go into detail, which is the Anguttara 441. 441. Would you like to know a little bit more about that sutta? Yes? Okay. So this is called Samadhi Bhavana Sutta. Again, I'm only going to go through briefly just to show, because it's the last one I think is quite interesting with these aggregates. At the end of the day, 5 aggregates is what is called this being. And it's understanding that these Panchupadana Khandha, these 5 aggregates are empty of a self, that there is no body in here. That is the full realization. That is what happens when you become an Arahant, and how that destruction of taints can happen is given here. So I will just read out the sutta. Bhikkhus, there are these 4 development of what is samadhi, right? Concentration, we can't use samadhi.
Yeah.
Samadhi?
Samadhi?
Okay.
Samadhi.
Development of samadhi. What for? There is a development of samadhi that leads to dwelling happily in this life. There is a development of samadhi that leads to the obtaining of knowledge and vision. There is a development of samadhi that leads to the mindfulness and clear comprehension. There is the development of samadhi that leads to the destruction of taints. So we want to know mainly the destruction of taints, but it has a progressive development. Probably you don't have to do all of those, but the important one is the first one, as Ajahn mentioned, the jhanas. So the first one is the development of the jhanas. So that is given here as the first one. This jhanas also give ditta dhamma sukha viharana, that is that abiding happy existence here and now, because at that time the hindrances are down. They are not eradicated in the jhana states, the first jhanas. They are subsided. So therefore you abide in a very, it is the hindrances that gives you a troubled, difficult existence. Take away your happiness, or dwelling happy in this life, because the hindrances are suppressed, and also there is this high mindfulness. And after that, based on that deep meditation, some people are able to develop this psychic ability called Dibba Chakku, and the second one is like this. And what is the development of samadhi that leads to obtaining knowledge and vision? Here a bhikkhu attends to the perception of light. He focuses on the perception of day thus: as by day, so at night; as at night, so by day. Thus, with a mind that is open and uncovered, he develops a mind imbued with luminosity. This is the development of samadhi that leads to obtaining knowledge and vision. So in here, this is now not seeing with the eye, but it is the mind's eye. This is what it is, because with our eye is very limited, right? So that is why in the night time we can't see anything, because the eye has a limitation for what kind of amount of light. But there are animals who can see at night, right? So their range is different. But it is still, the physical eye is limited. But the mind can also see. Do you believe that the mind can see? Not just the insights, but actual seeing as well. It is also possible. So the third eye which people hear, that is the wisdom eye, right? That's another kind of mind's eye. But the mind can actually see also. So like if you've heard near-death experiences, when people were completely unconscious, and then they had a near-death experience where their body floated up, and their eyes were closed in the theater, but they saw things and they remember things, and they come back and talk about it. They not only saw, they could hear also what the surgeon was talking about. You probably heard many stories. Ajahn Brahm says very funny stories as well. So it is possible for the mind to see. But the mind seeing is not limited by whether it is dark or light or anything, and it can see beyond. So when the mind starts to see, the mind will be able to see. I suppose when we hear about those days, the Brahmins and even the monastics were talking with the devas, they probably were using the mind's eye and the mind's ear to be able to communicate with devas. This is just my guessing. What do you think, Ajahn?
I agree. Yeah.
Yes. So this is essentially developing that ability to see through your mind. Yeah, because normally we can't see, right? So, but you can develop that ability to see, and it is them who can see. In another sutta, in the Mahatanha Sankaya Sutta, there is the mentioning, the people with the psychic ability for Dibbachakku, this divine eye, they can see when beings pass away, the stream of consciousness going out from, it says like going out from one house and entering another house. So going out from one body and entering another being. They can see the movement of the stream of consciousness with Dibbachakku. So the mind's eye can see that. So it's a psychic ability, but it is interesting because once you have that, it also gives you some insights, but without that also you can get enlightened though. It's not an absolute requirement, right? Yeah. It's helpful, it will be fun also maybe, I don't know. And then there is the development of samadhi that leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension, sati and sampajanya. So this is a very high degree of sati sampajanya, because sati sampajanya also starts, there is a beautiful sutta called Sati Sampajanya Sutta in Anguttara 883 or 881. And in there, this part starts with Sati Sampajanya. Right? So sati, that is the mindfulness and clear comprehension. Mindfulness together with wisdom. Some degree is necessary to even get started, to even know what is wholesome, what is unwholesome, what is going on with your life, what is the right thing to do, you know, what are you doing, how are you doing, why are you doing, that kind of level. But this is much more higher kind of level, but it is still mindfulness and clear comprehension. So here, what happens, so this is after the jhana now. So after deep meditation, when the hindrances are still down, because when you come out of deep meditation from the jhanas, the hindrances don't come back straight away. They are suppressed and down, and the mind remains powerful for a long period of time. During the jhana, while you are inside the absorption, it's a very frozen kind of a still state. You can't do very much. But it is after coming out, you gather all the information, you see what's going on, you can see everything, you know what's going on, but you do the reflection afterwards. So here a bhikkhu knows feeling as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. He knows perception as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. He knows thoughts as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. This is the development of samadhi that leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension. So to remember, for it to bear great fruit, this needs to be done with a very powerful mind. However, if you want to do this outside also, it can't do much harm as long as it's not the only thing that you do. You also do your breath meditation and in the proper way, but also if you do see, most other things are hard to see, but sometimes feelings arising and passing away you can see, and that can be very useful to overcome the fear of painful feeling, for example. That's a big thing, right? For us, we all have a certain amount of fear towards painful feeling, even both physical as well as mental. So this gives even more fear. This is what the fear of fear gives more fear. The anxiety and panic attack starts as a result of that. But if you sort of understand and see, even not in a very subtle way, but even how it came about and it remained, if you are mindful, if you can courageously face it and also see how it passes away, you get a good understanding. You see how when that contact, that mind contact, whatever way you give attention to is kept up. If it is a mind-related feeling, it's an emotion, that emotion is kept up. When that mind contact breaks and makes another contact, your object changes, the way you attend changes, that emotion changes. So that is with the mind, but so with the body. Physical feelings also, body constantly change, different things happen, and suddenly feeling vanishes. Sometimes you may have experienced during your meditation, you may have had a pain and you were just staying with it, and 1 minute it was there and the next minute it's gone just like that. Have you ever experienced that? Some people have experienced that. It's really interesting. Yeah, they come and they go. So then when you realize that, also your fear about painful feeling subsides. And also your chasing after pleasurable feelings also subside, because that too is a problem, right? This is our desires, this is our lust, these are our longings to have this all different kinds of pleasurable feelings. But when we get a good understanding about it's only this much, lasts only for this long, this is its peak, that is when it is gone, when you keep seeing that, that is also kind of helpful to just sort of have a little bit of peace in our life. But of course, when done after deep meditation, and especially seeing the jhana states, also the feelings that arise, the pleasure, the sukha, the blisses that arise, that how they remain and how they pass away, that also then makes you not get attached to them. So this is what comes up next. And what is the development of samadhi that leads to the destruction of taints? Here a bhikkhu develops contemplation, dwells contemplating arising and vanishing in the 5 aggregates subject to clinging. Such is form, such its origin, such its passing away. Such is feeling, such is origin, such it is passing away. So like that, the origin and its passing away for the 5 aggregates. But again, this is more related to the jhana state, or the mind state. Because in the other ones, it is very hard to see. Your mind doesn't have enough power to be able to see that would do any big kind of nibbida or turning away. But little things can still happen. So in day-to-day life, if you are able to see your perceptions about things changing, that's great. Then you don't really take things so seriously, opinions so seriously. Can I tell a story? You know, the time that you asked me to have a look at your Vesak essay a couple of years ago for the United Nations. Yeah. So Ajahn was doing an essay for United Nations, and he told me, have a critical review, give me your critical feedback. Like really, I really want to hear. So because he gave me permission, usually otherwise it's very hard for me. He's also my teacher. So, to criticize and give a critical review of your teacher's essay, right? Because he insisted. So I put on my critical glasses and really everything was red. I could criticize. I thought I should write this essay and give it to him. This is what happens when somebody asks you to give your opinion, right? Then I realized no matter how good our friendship is, it's going to be the last time. We are friends. If I send this off, no matter how amazing his practice is, still, this is not going to work. So I kept it to one side. 2 days later, I had another look. I was changing my own strong opinions. Actually, this is not bad. This is quite good. So things were changing again, going back to black. And then I was a bit suspicious. So 2 days later, again I had a look. Things changed again. So then I realized I can't send it. I sent an email asking, do you want my Tuesday 10 o'clock, Thursday 3 o'clock, or Sunday 5 o'clock? Because they are all different. So it gave me a good insight into, how strong views and opinions we have. My view is right? And we fight for it. We have so much arguments about it. It has to be like this. Your thing is stupid. It's going to make a lot of problems, waste money and trouble and this and that. My view is right. My opinion is true. But how reliable, how long-lasting? Because that's how it was. The first time I wrote, it was my true opinion, true view about his essay. The next day, my views and opinions have changed. The next day, again, it has changed. And this is the thing. They are really unreliable. They are really insubstantial. That really, our perceptions change all the time. So therefore, once you start to see that even that much something does to you. So now I'm like, when I have really strong opinions, sometimes it still comes out, but sometimes I remember, well, I can't trust this, let me see. And true enough, after a while it changes, and you are easy to change your mind as well. You are easy to give in and say, okay, let's do it your way. Sometimes it's very hard to tell, okay, let's do it your way, but after you start to see this unreliable nature, it gives also you opportunity to be able to accept other views and opinions and other people as well. So anyway, so that is just done outside, but it doesn't still get you enlightened at that level, but it can bring more peace to your life. Yeah, when you start to see these things in your day-to-day life, it starts to bring a lot more peace. You can become a little bit more aloof. Otherwise, you are still become enslaved by these very things. But done after deep meditation, that leads to the complete ending of complete destruction of the taints, which is really important. It is really important, and that is the final end. Because this was given, right, at these things, having comprehended the world's highs and lows. He is not perturbed by anything in the world, peaceful, fumeless, untroubled, wishless. He has, I say, crossed over birth and old age. So this idea keeps coming in other suttas, the comprehend the Dhamma or comprehend world's highs and lows. It's the same thing. So understanding this is what the Buddha means at the end of the day to do these practices is important, how this is done. So what can we do? Because we are still here, maybe not yet too much into deep meditation, so can we do something here and now still also to get closer? This is important, right? Are you interested? Because this is also necessary. Of course, we know what we also need to do, but what can we do to get there? Because it is not so easy to overcome this seamstress. She is very, very strong, very fast, very skilled, very cunning, grabs us from every corner possible. So it's a big fight to get over her. So what else can we do? So there are other things we can do, like just like this, you can also try and see the arising and passing away of things, which you can see to your whatever ability you have. The more peace you have, the more you see. That is still helpful to calm your mind, to be able to calm the hindrances down. But there are many, many other ways of doing that. I will not have time to tell all of these ways. One of the ones that comes to my mind is this Aditta Pariyaya Sutta. This is the burning sutta. It is in the Aditta Pariyaya Sutta is in Samyutta Nikaya 35:28. So I won't go through like in reading it out, but it's one of my favorite suttas. It says, "Eye is burning." Is your eye burning? Really? I can't see any flames, no fumes. Have you realized your eye is burning? Because of your eye, did you get burnt? By seeing some sights, did you start burning? Yes. So eye is burning. You understand the meaning of burning here. Yeah? Burning is a meaning for suffering. Yes, you suffer. Forms are burning. All those beautiful, attractive things are also burning. All the things that repel you are also burning. So outside things are also burning. The Buddha says, eye contact. So now you know what contact is. Eye contact is also burning. Eye consciousness is also burning. The feelings that arise as a result of eye contact and eye consciousness, the experience of sight, is also burning. The same goes to the ear, to the nose, to the tongue, to the body, to the mind. So all six senses. So this is homework at a time when you're bored and can't meditate, can't watch the breath, then you can do this. And in a real way when you realize you just heard one word. These days one emoji burns you as well. You have to put one emoji is burning into the thing. So you can do that and see, yes, these things are actually bringing suffering. Through these things we are completely burning, and we burn through old age, sickness. So we burn through birth to begin with, old age, sickness, sorrow, lamentation, grief, despair, all of these things arise as a result as well. So we are in a big burning process. So what is Nibbana? Nibbana, the meaning of that word is extinguishment. Ajahn was telling we should always use the word extinguishment for Nibbana, because otherwise we sort of try to read all kinds of strange things into Nibbana or enlightenment. Instead, if we call extinguishment, it is not so hard to understand what getting enlightened means. So Nibbana, extinguishment, is this very fires going out. So we said our eyes burning, forms are burning, our consciousness is burning, so all these things are burning, all of that cooling down. And you can experience the cooling process, right? We can imagine when you were a teenager, or like when the things were really, when you're so busy, so when you're so into the sensual world and doing things, compare that to when you have started the spiritual path, when you are meditating more. Have you cooled down a bit more? I'm sure you experience that cooling down. You also meet people who are pretty cooled down, right? It's really, you can feel they're not so easy to agitate. There are people who are highly combustible, right? You only have to open the mouth and they explode. You haven't even said anything. You're only about to say explode. Highly combustible. And there are some other people, you can try and try and try, nothing happens. They're like ice cubes. There are people like this. It's quite inspiring when we meet them, right? Some people may be in a different way, but some people, because they are actually wise, they are actually kind, they sometimes laugh at you. My father was a bit like that. When my mother used to be very highly combustible. When she was young, she's very different now. So she would fire up. But my father is like this ice block. He laughs. He starts laughing because he sees the silliness of what upsets my mom. But anyway, it's kind of nice to cool down. I find it very inspiring to be around people who are cool like this. Yeah. Not cool with sunglasses and wearing the most stylish things, but cool in the right way. And the Buddha also talks about this, how the enlightened beings, siti bhutos minti nibbuto, like they have cooled right there, right? That's how the cooling process, all the fires are extinguished. So this is a very beautiful way for us to understand how to progress on the path. Do whatever cools down your fires, not make them more big. Because sometimes we add fuel to our fires and create big fires. But we also know how to cool down. So cooling happens with what? The cooling agent is wisdom, right view. So that is why Ajahn was also mentioning how important it is, even in the morning, saying how important it is to cultivate all the other factors of the Eightfold Path, especially right view. The more right view you have, the more cooling agent you have. So you can extinguish your fires easier, faster. So this is what we can do right here, right now. And by doing so, we are getting closer and closer to be able to get into deeper meditation. Because what stops us getting into deeper meditation is these big fires that are out of control, right? So we have to sort of find a way to take care of some of these very gross defilements. So this is also what comes up in the Satipatthana Sutta. Vinaya loke abhijja domanassam. So that, getting rid of those the sensuality and ill will and all those, that kind of, it's grouped into like the big defilements. So those has to be subsided before we sit for meditation. So that this can be done outside as well. These reflections are very helpful. So this is just one, but there are many, many other ways which we will learn maybe through this retreat. You will learn through your spiritual life, and you can practice. So I would like to just properly wrap up this sutta in the last 10 minutes. So we went through who here in the world is content. Now we have understood, in the morning Ajahn Brahmali also mentioned the injita and anenja, like somebody who is not shaken. So this is the idea, even a Buddha is somebody who is unshaken. So enlightened being, that is somebody who is unshaken. So somebody who is completely contented is somebody fully extinguished one. And so they are the ones who has no agitation. So in the previous sessions we spoke about how agitation come to be. Agitation come to be starting with what? A sense of self, the conceivings. Me, mine, myself, I am, what belongs to me. When we assume, when we take up, when we perceive and conceive things with a sense of self, and then craving is born as well. So together, these two is what agitates our mind. So all forms of agitation. So somebody who has given up craving and the sense of self is gone for an enlightened being, so they are unagitated. They have become completely cooled, stilled. So what's here, having known both ends, is not stuck in the middle. We went into great length understanding this bit. And who you say is a great man, who has gone beyond the seamstress here. So that part we did very well. Leading the spiritual life among sensual pleasures. Replied the Buddha, rid of craving, ever mindful. Having comprehended, a bhikkhu is quenched. For him there is no agitation. So even though the sensual pleasures are there still, all the food, the music and everything, even the arahants live amongst those things, they are not affected by them. In the same way they affect an unenlightened being. So rid of craving, because they now have no craving, and so there is mindfulness established, fully mindful of, because the hindrances are no longer there, right? No hindrances. Hindrances are completely gone. Defilements, taints, everything ended. So the mind is pure. And having comprehended, so we also learned what is having comprehended meant, is doing all of those things. A bhikkhu is quenched, so extinguished, cooled down, all the fires gone. For him there is no agitation, so there is no movement, there is also no rebirth. It is the agitation which makes the movement for a rebirth. So this is kind of really what this sutta is about. So then the last verse is that here, having known both ends, is not stuck in the middle. He is a great man, I declare, gone beyond the seamstress here. But I also want to read something to show how they live among sensual pleasures without being affected by it. And this is a sutta that I was going to read out the other day but ran out of time. This is a sutta given to the bhikkhunis. This is Nandakovada Sutta. Since we have a little bit of time, I'm going to read it out because there is a very beautiful simile that comes up in that sutta. So this is Majjhima Nikaya 146. So here Venerable Nandaka goes and gives some teachings to the nuns. And here, this is just an extract. There's a long way of coming to this, but since lack of time, I will only do this much. Sisters, what do you think? Is ear permanent or impermanent? They say impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent and suffering and subject to change fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. No, Venerable Sir. Why is that? Before I answer that, do you also agree with this? You say, is ear permanent or impermanent? What would you say? Impermanent. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering. If what is suffering and impermanent can be taken as you and yourself? No. Are you enlightened then now? Why is that? So this is the point, right? So the answer comes like this. these nuns were very well practiced nuns. They've already been practicing the jhanas. They've been doing these contemplations after jhanas, because they give this answer. Why is that? Because they answered, no, Venerable Sir. Why is that? Then the nuns answer, because, Venerable Sir, we have already seen this well as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. These 6 internal bases are impermanent. So they have seen with proper wisdom means that they have seen it after the jhanas, after the hindrances are down with proper wisdom. This is when that knowledge and vision part comes in, so they have seen. So just to show that just by understanding, yes, these things are not enough for our desire and craving for them to vanish. It has to be seen through proper wisdom. And sisters, suppose an oil lamp is burning. Its oil is impermanent and subject to change. Its wick is impermanent and subject to change. Its flame is impermanent and subject to change. And its radiance is impermanent and subject to change. Now, would anyone be speaking rightly who spoke thus? While this oil lamp is burning, its oil, wick and flame are impermanent and subject to change, but its radiance is permanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change. No, Venerable Sir. Why is that? Because, Venerable Sir, while that oil lamp is burning, its oil, wick and flame are impermanent and subject to change, so its radiance must be impermanent and subject to change. So, too, sisters, would anyone be speaking rightly who spoke thus? These 6 internal bases are impermanent and subject to change, but pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant feelings that one experiences in dependence upon the 6 internal bases is permanent, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change. No, Venerable Sir. Why is that? Because each feeling arises in dependence upon its corresponding condition. And with the cessation of its corresponding condition, the feeling ceases. Good sisters. So it is with a noble disciple who sees this as it actually is with proper wisdom. That is quite a beautiful simile, right? Not hard to understand. The simile I want to talk about is the next one. But this one was already good, right? Because it shows the conditional nature and why feelings are, and this is not hard for us to understand. But the next one is, sisters, suppose a skilled butcher or his apprentice were to kill a cow and carve it up with a sharp butcher's knife, without damaging the inner mass of flesh and without damaging the outer hide. He would cut, sever, and crave away the inner tendons, sinews, and ligaments with the sharp butcher's knife. Then, having cut, severed, and carved all this away, he would remove the other hide and cover the cow again with that same hide. Would he be speaking rightly if he were to say, this cow is joined to this hide just as it was before? What do you think? No, right? Because it's now cut off. No, Venerable Sir. Why is that? Because if that skilled butcher or his apprentice were to kill the cow and cut all of these things, it is not just the way as it is. So I read it quickly just to save time. Otherwise it's just repeated in the same way. Sisters, I have given this simile in order to convey a meaning. This is the meaning. The inner mass of flesh is a term for the 6 internal bases. So that is the eye, nose, tongue, body, and mind. The outer hide is a term for the 6 external bases, the forms, sounds, tactile objects, those things, right? The inner tendons, sinews, and ligaments is a term for the delight and lust, right? It is the delight and lust. The sharp butcher's knife is a term for the noble wisdom. The noble wisdom that cuts, severs, and carves away the inner defilements, fetters, and bonds. Quite beautiful, isn't it? With wisdom, you cut the lust away. So once the lust is cut away, then it is not bounded anymore. So this is how an arahant lives among the sensual pleasures, but not bonded to it, because its tendons, all those things are cut away. Lust and craving and desire is cut away. So even they see they are together, they are not together. They are not put together because it's cut away through the sharp wisdom, the sharp knife of wisdom. Sisters, there are these, okay, so that, this is also nice. Sisters, there are these 7 enlightenment factors through the development and cultivation of which a bhikkhu, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge, here and now enters upon and abides in the deliverance of mind, Ceto Vimutti, and deliverance of wisdom, Panya Vimutti, that are taintless with the destruction of the taints. What are the 7? Here, sisters, a bhikkhu develops the mindfulness enlightenment factor, which is supported by, this is the part that is important. So mindfulness, sati sambojjhanga, seclusion, dispassion, cessation, ripens in relinquishment. And he goes on saying for all the factors. So all the 7 factors are to be developed based on these, supported by these 4 factors. This morning also Ajahn was mentioning, it is important, the foundations, the supports, to build those up. That is where we need to do our work, not just focus only about the technique and trying to meditate, but we need to put in the causes and conditions. We need to build up the foundations, the supports and seclusion. So viveka nisitang, viraga nisitang, nirodha nisitang, vossagga parinaming. These are the 4 terms: seclusion, dispassion, cessation, and ripens in relinquishment. So these are 4 bases to get started. Even this is not only for the bojjhangas, because bojjhangas, the enlightenment factors, are coming up at the later part of the development, but this is also given again and again in the discourses on the path. So all of the Noble Eightfold Paths and even other factors, all the 37 factors, are to be developed based on these 4 foundations. So time is up. I'm not going to talk about it, but I will talk about it because it's my favorite subject. What they are, I will get to it. I just want to make the connection, right? That the development of the bojjhangas and things like that. So that is it for this afternoon. So there are these beautiful trees, the forests, the empty huts, like the Buddha says. Go and meditate, cultivate meditation and insight. So I wish you all the best. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.